Welcome back with another banger. It's the React Files. Hope you're having a good night. Let's get straight to it.
So today I want to shed some light on a very controversial topic. Grays. So this information is going to be coming from Gaia TV, Cosmic Disclosure, and this is going to be season 15, episode 3, and season 15, episode 6. Okay, so first and foremost, grays. There's many types of gray species throughout the universe, and one common misconception is that they are bad or evil. And we're going to get into that. But first, I want to differentiate. There's something called the small grays, and these ones are about 3 feet tall. These are called PLFs, programmed life forms. They're basically robots created from some organic materials and some technology. Then we have the taller grays, which are just called grays. So in the universe, there's like a trinity to create an individual: a soul, a body, and a mind. However, that body does not need to be organic. It can be artificial. And the grays do have genetically engineered bodies. The grays, who are from Orion, they say that they are from a previous version of the universe, and that basically they were so logical and so focused on what was the best thing for their whole species, they felt it was no longer a necessity and more of a hindrance for them to have organic bodies. The gray system. It's like society, but because it's spread out in so many places, it's called a system. It's an authoritarian system. Each gray is an individual and does have their own free will, but every decision is made from the top of the master line. And they have 3 master lines. So these master lines are basically 3 parallel realities of their society. And it's a hierarchical system, so there's one individual at the top of each of these 3 parallel realities. But because they are a time-traveling species, they discovered that one of these master lines would fail. So they destroyed it. And now they have a lot of trauma, and they're really worried about any of the other master lines failing, because then they would cease to exist. Which is part of the reason that they're interfering with Earth people. They say that they're not interested in Earth as a planet or humanity as a whole. That they're only interested in specific individuals. At the top of each of the 3 master lines is the person with the most credits. They receive credits by completing missions. Every mission is going to be based off of the top of the master line, that person's plan, because that person controls the entire gray system. So for example, it would be like the Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk's, or the real richest men in the world who we don't have the names of, but okay. We'll just use the celebrity ones for this. However, their system is not really based on greed. Their system is based on the vision. So since they're a time-traveling species, they know how each timeline ends. And they've already screwed up one of their master lines and had to destroy it because they went to a failed timeline. Their leader of their master line has the vision of what is the greatest plan for the universe's evolution. And everyone below them has to follow the vision of that person. So it combines vision, their economy, and a hierarchical system. Now, it's also believed that our economic system is originated from the grays. Okay, so let's get back to the small grays. These are the ones you're gonna see like in abductions. And that's because people will just use credits to pay for an artificial body. And going back to the body, mind, soul, the body doesn't have to be real. And who said it only has to be one body? So sometimes they put their consciousness in several of these robot bodies. But you don't need to be a gray to purchase a small gray programmed life form. They actually sell them to many different alien races and even some humans. But since you're not a gray, you're not a part of their credit system. So then they just entrap you into a soul contract with them. Coming up, I'm going to answer the question of, why wouldn't the aliens just abduct us instead of asking permission from the government and creating a whole treaty? This information is coming from Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia TV. The reason that the grays went to our government is because he said each alien species will basically act in a way that is natural to their own system. So because the grays live in a governmental system, an authoritarian capitalistic system, which follows a master line, which follows a leader, then they find it most appropriate, take me to your leader. However, he does say that there's other species of aliens that don't have governments, and those type of species typically do not contact governments unless it is necessary. Those type of species that are more individualistic will contact individuals directly, which is why we hear a lot about Pleiadians and Nordics and how they channel messages directly to people. Okay, so I wanted to answer this question too. The Greys are just us in the future, and that is what we will evolve into. So this information is coming, episode right here, season 16, episode 8. Their species is not. However, some of them are. So their species is from a previous version of our universe, and they existed long before humanity ever did. However, they say the reason that so many people feel that they are us in the future is because he says there's many humans that are alive right now that are going to commit themselves into the gray system in their future life. So some of the grays that come and contact people are future versions of themselves. So sometimes like a gray could abduct you, and it could be you in a future incarnation, or something that's connected to one of your future incarnations, or something that used to be a human in its past life. Okay, so this is a very important question. If we're a planet of free will, how can they abduct us without our consent? Since they have this master line that has a vision for how the universe has to end up, then there's individuals on Earth who are very important to that mission. So if one of those individuals does not want to be involved in this abduction, they might time travel and ask a future incarnation of yourself thousands of years from now for permission to abduct you today. And since it is your soul, you can consent.
Soul contracts. Now that sounds deep. Shout out to JK Ultra. It makes me think of these celebrities who we say have pictures from the 40s. We call them time travelers. Could they have signed a soul contract? Between that and these artificial bodies, like they clone Tyrone, and jump in timelines like Umbrella Academy.
This is Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge. I'm here in Turkey in Cappadocia, and I'm at the grotto of these caves where over 7,000 people lived at one particular time. And right here, you're looking at an actual dining table. Not just any dining table, a dining table that represents the Last Supper. As a matter of fact, there's an actual painting of the Last Supper there with Jesus and his disciples. What's crazy is this painting and this supper table is actually 1,000 years old. Da Vinci was only done in the 16th century, which means Da Vinci gained his inspiration from this.
Yo, shout outs to Billy Carson, showing the real dinner table of the Last Supper. What a world we live in. Just to be able to see it through social media, for him to share it, not have to write it in a book or make a hieroglyphic of it. It's just amazing in itself. So shout outs to him taking that trip, man. Showing the world the table of the Last Supper, yo. That's mind blowing. Just a thought. I didn't even know it still exists.
So this lady noticed that these birds that were on her property haven't been on her property lately, and she looked around and found them dead next to her house. She was going to make a burial site for them and bury them, but she noticed after about a month and a half to 2 months that these birds have no worms, no maggots, no foul odor to them whatsoever, and she's like confused about what's going on. Look at that. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 birds. 6 of them that are dead. That's the little one that's been 3 weeks. It's been dead for 3 weeks, and again, no worms, no maggots, no foul smell. Look at that, y'all. She went to go get her son to ask her about it. Again, these birds used to be around her garden and watching like what's going on. So her son went to go put on the gloves, and this is what he found, y'all. Check this out. There you go. You got the chips. Whatever it is, that's one of the birds. And he searches all of them, and they all have this within them. Look at that, y'all. Every single one of them had them in it.
No wonder there was no flies.
That's why there were no flies. I mean, I'm sure some of y'all know that even in the CIA website, they disclose to you that birds are used as surveillance objects. And I believe it was in the 1940s that they removed all the birds and replaced them with, you know, these drones, these camera drones, just to see what we are doing. How else are they going to keep a bird's eye view on us? Y'all know what I'm saying? But I just thought that was a very interesting video, y'all. Let me know what you guys think about this video. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only. This is my own conclusion. Even though you seen them chips on them birds and it states this on the CIA website, this is my own conclusion, TikTok. But like, comment, and share for more videos like this. Thank you for tuning to my frequency. Let's get this shift. Peace out.
I wasn't expecting to see this. Maybe that's the reason why there's a chip shortage. Shout outs to Conscious Juice. I've heard of wildlife associations tagging birds and species, but these birds don't look rare at all. Maybe they were watching her.
I wanted to give you guys some additional information about the Greys from a different source, specifically about the small Greys. So this information is going to come from Dolores Cannon, Keepers of the Garden. This information is coming from chapter 23 called Denial of Access. So Dolores was asking Phil, under hypnosis, for more information about the abductions. The answers that come through is that they have volunteered for this mission that is happening on Earth at this time on a collective level. They say they do not want to call it experiment because the outcome is already known. The ultimate outcome on a collective level, not the individual and personal outcomes. Those you will create on your own. So she asks about the beings that are doing the abductions. They say that they are humanoid in nature and are distant relatives, and that some of them are androids. And this information lines up with what we've heard about these small Greys being robots, technically. She says, what do these creatures look like? Those that you have described as gray in appearance and small in stature are typical. The eyes, of course, are the most prominent facial feature. They are the main communication receptor. Do their eyes function the same as human eyes? In a sense, but they collect more information and a wider spectrum of our visible light, as well as infrared and ultraviolet regions of light. Do they have pupils? Yes, but not to capture light. But the pupils are used to receive. She asks about different bodily functions like breathing and eating. The answer is that they don't, and they don't have emotions, although they are empathetic to react to emotions. How are these creatures produced? Now, what's interesting is this does line up with what Tim from Cosmic Disclosure said. There's a central part of the planet which holds the energies of a governmental nature. An analogy would be the county or state in which your political system lies. This is how they're created, through a governmental structure. They have mental responsiveness, but not a mental identity. She asks, are they cloned or manufactured? Yes, they are both. But the mental energy is given by a life force. They are manufactured because it's more of an assembly than a growth. They are not a living life force. These are androids that are responsive to your mental energies. Dolores asks, is there any experiments with humans and the androids? They said not so, because there is no procreation of these androids. These androids do not directly communicate with people on Earth. They only communicate with their superiors. She asks, who are their superiors? Those who are responsible for the particular mission that they're on, which this lines up with what Tim was saying about these missions and the credits and basically the small Greys being sent out to complete these missions based off of the Master Line's vision. They say that some of these visitations and abductions are to prepare people for the coming Earth shift, and that the volunteers are training in their sleep. Many of the people who are experiencing these abductions have experienced the destruction of a planet in their previous life. And many of them are Pleiadian in nature. And to be clear, this was about the small Greys.
That's crazy. Shout outs to JK Ultra. It reminds me of the androids from Dragon Ball Z, made on an assembly line because they're not procreated. It makes me think of all the robots I've been seeing in the news lately.
They still have running water on Mars. They've found a 12-hectare lake. They did a press release on mainstream news where they showed water running down the side of a mountain on Mars. They said that the soil on Mars is better for growing crops than the soil on Earth now. They are really, prepping us that they're going to be moving to Mars. A breakaway civilization will be created on Mars. We're the new Anunnaki.
So what happened to it? Because it must have been thriving at one point.
A couple things happened to Mars. Mars has a crazy story. The first thing is Mars was not a planet. Mars only recently became a planet. It was a habitable moon that orbited a planet, which is now the asteroid belt. So the asteroid belt, you put those pieces back together, that actually was a planet named Tiamat. In the ancient tablets, in the Enuma Elish, in the 7 tablets of creation, you discover that in the coalescing of our solar system in that process, there was either a moon of another planet that crashed into Tiamat and broke it into pieces, or as a state, it was a war that was going on in this sector of our solar system. And it's not clear whether it's just metaphorical war or if it really is just this collision of moons and planets. But either way, it was destroyed. Now, when it blew up, huge chunks of it hit Mars. One side of Mars is charred, the other side is the smoothest surface in the solar system.
A lot of people wondered if dinosaurs existed when mankind existed. Well, in my opinion, here's the evidence. You can see this looks almost like a stegosaurus.
Yeah.
You can see with the meat on its bones, which means whoever made this knew what it looked like, okay? One thing I found from a lot of these ancient cultures, they always draw what they saw or what they knew. Nobody just said, one day I'm going to have a fantasy of making a dinosaur. Yes. So, even if they saw the bones, how would they get the structure right with this kind of muscle and everything else? Yeah. Because they probably saw it. And you can find dinosaurs at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey on the stone columns. And a lot of different other places around the world, you'll find ancient sites with depictions of dinosaurs exactly how they looked in ancient times, which means that 65 million years ago, yes, something probably happened and dinosaurs became almost extinct. But because other animals survived, we know that possibly some of these dinosaurs also survived. And the evidence can be found at temples like this at Tao Prom and many other places around the world.
Man, shout outs to Billy Carson. That's amazing. Using that passport, getting them stamps and using it for good use to share this history with the world. Those are stone carvings. I feel them. That ain't no fantasy.
And now, the Pleiadians. Originating in the Pleiades star system, let's start at the beginning. Also known as the Seven Sisters from Greek mythology, people from this star system are said to be some of the original designers of the human race.
I think that he was an alien. I don't think that they were from this planet at all. When you look into a lot of these ancient tablets, now I've researched and read now over 1,000 tablet scriptures and texts and baked stones, everything else, cylinder scrolls over the last 20 years. And I'm starting to realize that there was an ancient war, possibly in the Pleiadian star cluster, which is mentioned in Homer's Iliad and the Bible and everything else. These Pleiadian star, the Seven Sisters, where there was an ancient war. And I really do believe that refugees fled that region. Some ended up in the Orion, some ended up in the Sirius star system, sure. And also some, I believe, ended up on this Nibiru planet, which is orbiting a brown dwarf star. I think that
found in the area of Nineveh in ancient Sumeria. This is quite amazing here because it has 3 dots in a row that follows with an arrow. I'm pretty convinced this is Orion. The Pleiades has been the collective cluster, and it's a definite cluster. Marian seal. Sitchin made this one quite famous. Museums like the British Museum insist that this is the Pleiades. It's so fantastic to see the Pleiades in such detail. Yes, it is a Pleiades. Historians in the Berlin Museum, but this original is kept. They speak of it as the Pleiades.
So what you saw was 3 ancient Sumerian artifacts that appeared to portray the Pleiades. But that's not all. And if you're in the comments telling me I should read the Bible, the Pleiades, also called the 7 stars, are mentioned 7 times in the Bible. And not only the Pleiades, but also Orion, where the Greys originate, and Arcturus, which we'll be getting into later in this series. Again in the Bible, the sweet influences of the Pleiades. The Book of Revelation, the 7 stars, and Orion. Again in the Book of Revelation. But that's not all. It shows up in Hebrew texts in the Talmud, as well as Islamic texts. The Prophet Muhammad mentioned the Pleiades. In fact, the former princess of Iran was named after the Pleiades. They're found in Cherokee myths, as well as Hopi. Here's an interesting one. They linked the Pleiades to Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Navajo folklore, ancient Vedic texts. Indonesia, Thailand. Here's an interesting one. Up until 1950, Jehovah's Witnesses were taught that the Pleiadian star Alcyone was likely to be the site of the throne of God. In Australia, these Egyptian hieroglyphs are found in the outback. The Aboriginal elders said that they were created by the Pleiadians themselves. And since I started this alien series, every car in front of me is a Subaru, which is Japanese for Pleiades. Stay tuned.
Subaru is Japanese for Pleiadians. I've learned so much. I'm learning so much from JK Ultra right now. Shout outs to her. It amazes me that it's in so many different ancient texts and hieroglyphics. What's mind-blowing is that it's mentioned in the Bible.
Appalachia High School shooting suspect Colt Gray will be charged as an adult despite being just 14 years old. Gray is to be charged with murder after allegedly shooting at least 13 people at the school in Georgia, killing 4. It has also emerged that Gray was on the FBI's radar a year before the tragedy, following several anonymous tips about online threats to commit a school shooting at an unidentified location and time, according to the agency.
Holy crap, guys, this is a big update regarding the Georgia school shooter. Apparently, law enforcement investigated and interviewed him back in 2023 for guess what? Making threats to do what he did today. Now, at the time, both he and his father were interviewed, but apparently there was no probable cause for them to make an arrest or for there to be any further investigation, and he denied that he even ever made those threats. The other thing I can share with you is this. There's apparently heavy police activity at the shooter's home. What you can see in this picture is basically a helicopter, but there is heavy presence there. I'm guessing they are searching his house. So the last couple things I'm going to share with you are this. First of all, as we know, this shooter was 14 years old, which makes him the youngest person to kill more than one person, K through 12, ever. It is also confirmed that he is going to be charged with murder. My guess is that it's going to come out to 4 counts at this point and probably 9 counts of attempted. He has been arrested and will be tried as an adult. I will be live later tonight talking about this, so if you see that I'm live, jump in. But it really is something that the FBI had gotten tips about this guy over a year ago, and this was able to happen.
Yes, that's a huge update. Shout outs to Justin on TikTok. My condolences to the family of the victims. I know they're taking cell phones from the kids in school these days, but these days, everybody need to have a cell phone for safety.
So before we go any further, we're going to have to talk about the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki is a word that's often used to describe the gods who came from the sky in the ancient Sumerian artifacts and tablets. And for those of you that might not be aware, ancient Sumeria is modern-day Iraq. And during the war in Iraq, many of these artifacts and tablets were stolen and smuggled into the US and were acquired by Hobby Lobby. Yes, Hobby Lobby. They were shipped as imported tiles. So back to the Anunnaki. So this is a bit of a divided topic among the alien enthusiasts. Some believe that the Anunnaki are one specific race of aliens. Personally, based on what I've read and seen and the opinions of people who have interpreted these tablets, the Anunnaki just means from the heavens or from the sky, or some say that it means princely seed. And many people believe that the Anunnaki are actually a mix of several different races that were manipulating the genetics of humans at that time. As we saw in the previous part, many Sumerian artifacts are depicting the Pleiades star cluster. As we see in this book by Barbara Marciniak, Bringers of the Dawn. This book is one of my favorites. We're going to be getting into it. If you want, you can listen to the audiobook for free. If you go to my YouTube, go to audiobooks playlist, it'll be the first one on that list. Now, this book is channeled from Pleiadians. And the Pleiadians giving this information claim that they are from the future and that their ancestors are our ancestors. That basically their ancestors gave their DNA to the original designers of the human race. So the New Age movement Pleiadians are going to be different than the Anunnaki Pleiadians. I want to make that clear. Most of the time when people are channeling Pleiadians, they're channeling Pleiadians from the future, not our ancestors. So we saw in the last part how the Pleiadians are acknowledged in all different cultures and all different religions. So we also see the Orion star system depicted. These Greys from Orion also claim to have genetically modified humans and be partially responsible for creating us. Every time the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters or the Seven Stars come up in the Bible, Orion also comes up in the Bible. And then there's another common theme in all of these creation stories across all these cultures. A serpent-like being. Is it possible that junk DNA or non-coding DNA is actually holding the DNA of many different alien species? What if alien disclosure is not going to be aliens revealing themselves, but us discovering that we ourselves are from an off-planet origin? And has the Bible told us that the whole time? Now back to the Anunnaki. This is Anu. Anu was the supreme god of ancient Sumer and the ultimate king of the Anunnaki. And you know I'm not going to bring you the basic information. So this book, The Pleiadian Agenda by Barbara Handclough, not to be confused with Barbara Marciniak. The book is channeled from Pleiadians, but not just Pleiadians. Barbara Handclough channels Anu himself. So according to Anu, he came to Earth 450,000 years ago from the planet Nibiru. That Nibiru used to be a part of the Sirius star system, but that it basically got absorbed by our solar system a long time ago. And it only becomes visible to us every 36,000 years. That ancient Egypt was originally established by Syrians, but that Anu eventually took over Egypt as well. That the Anunnaki are the ones that constructed a net around our planet, which prevents us from being multidimensional. Anu was the father god of Nibiru, and that they had cities, a temple culture, and socialization, which is what they brought here to ancient Sumer. He directed indigenous people to construct temples here on Earth, but he was creating those temples out of greed, control, and power for the reasons of competition and jealousy. And this has been ingrained into humanity. And it created the Mogul mindset because creating and building was supposed to be about freedom, not about power and greed. That the beings from Nibiru are a metallic species. The reason they wanted gold is because it's how to open the portals to enter 3D. And the Anunnaki are responsible for the patriarchy. However, there's some other interesting information. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so the Anunnaki started in ancient Sumer. Then their influence took over Egypt, and then Rome. And then when Rome fell, they took over the Roman Catholic Church. But let's go back a second. Why did they do that? You know how we said Nibiru only comes around every 36,000 years? Well, the last time it came around, according to this book, was when they started the Hebrew calendar. That the Hebrew calendar starts when Nibiru appeared. Now, fast forward to Rome, Julius Caesar changed the calendar to the Julian calendar. They said this was the beginning of several calendar manipulations. They said there was more behind this, that Julius Caesar was a member of the Temple of Jupiter, and that it was descendants of Nibiru who wanted dominion over time. Now, time could descend to zero, and then after that, start over again and go on forever. And they say this happened because of something around that time. At this time was when higher dimensional beings, including Christ and Buddha, were able to incarnate on Earth. And they say this is why the Roman Empire took over time, changed spirituality to organized religion, and changed love to dependency. Because they say that the love and the frequency of Christ coming to Earth was so high that people would not be able to stay in the third dimension for long. However, these fourth dimensional gods, the Anunnaki, needed to lock us into the third dimension by creating a frequential net around the planet that would enable them to have dominion over us in the third dimension. Which is why they took over the church and replaced the power and knowledge of Christ and switching it to fear of death, disempowering women, forgetting the multidimensional self, and using it to control people. Messiah means message. Then she channels Anubis. Anubis, the ancient Egyptian god who resembles a dog person. Sirius is known as the dog star. That's why it's Sirius XM's logo, a dog with a star eye. So Anubis says this 0 point in time caused the manifestation of Christ to come to earth. And as we know, Mary Magdalene in the Bible was Jesus's wife. And according to this, she was the priestess of the Temple of Isis of Jerusalem. And this story of Osiris from ancient Egypt being dismembered, it was apparently Christ who remembered by having children with Mary and allowing Christ to be in the DNA of humans.
Yo, that's some mind-blowing stuff right there. I feel it all traces back to ancient Egypt, but this information is so vast. It's so crazy how many of our logos match up with these stars, like Sirius, Subaru. What's really crazy is how they changed that calendar. I always wondered why it goes from BC, JK be dropping these gems.
Before time carved the stories of gods and demons into the fabric of human belief, there were the Anunnaki, beings of immense power and unknowable intent. The Sumerians worshipped them as gods, their wings casting shadows across the realms of men. But what if these ancient deities were more than mere myth? What if they were visitors from another dimension, misunderstood and misinterpreted across the ages? The Sumerians were not the first, nor the last, to encounter the Anunnaki. These beings, with their horned crowns and ethereal presence, appeared throughout ancient cultures, their influence transcending borders and beliefs. To the untrained eye, they might seem divine, but to those who dared to see beyond the veil, they were something far more profound and more terrifying. As civilization advanced, the echoes of these interdimensional travelers reverberated through time, morphing into the entities we now call demons. Religious texts, with their tales of fallen angels and demonic presences, may have woven the Anunnaki into their narratives, mistaking their otherworldly nature for malevolence. Could the Anunnaki be the inspiration behind these tales, misunderstood as demons by those who glimpsed their true form? Imagine beings who can shift between dimensions, moving freely between the realms of existence. To those who dwell in darkness and light, the Anunnaki may appear as both saviors and destroyers. In ancient texts, they guided humanity, gifting knowledge and technology that reshaped the world. Yet as these legends passed through the ages, their true nature became obscured, twisted by the lens of fear and faith. Religions arose, interpreting the inexplicable through doctrines of good and evil. The Anunnaki, once venerated as gods, became symbols of chaos and destruction. Their power, once a source of awe, transformed into a warning of malevolent forces lurking in the shadows. To many, they became demons, eternal adversaries to be exorcised and banished. Yet the truth may lie in the margins of these narratives, a truth obscured by the passage of time. The possibility of the Anunnaki as interdimensional beings opens the door to a chilling reality. They may not be confined to myths or legends, but instead continue to influence our world from beyond the veil. In the quiet corners of human consciousness, they linger, observing our struggles and triumphs, waiting for the moment to return. If they are indeed travelers from another dimension, what purpose do they serve? Are they guardians or conquerors, benevolent guides, or harbingers of chaos? Perhaps they seek to reclaim what was once theirs, or perhaps they watch, waiting for humanity to reach a level of understanding that bridges our worlds. In the end, the Anunnaki remind us of the vast unknown that lies beyond our understanding. They challenge the boundaries of our reality, urging us to question what we perceive as truth. As we delve into the mysteries of the universe, we must consider the possibility that these beings walk among us, shaping our destinies from the shadows.
There were several Arks of the Covenant. One of them was located inside the Great Pyramid, inside the King's Chamber. There's a stone rose granite box in the King's Chamber that are the exact same dimensions in cubits as the Ark of the Covenant. It was added later because the pyramid had lost its ability to generate the full power. So they put the Ark in that rose granite box to add the extra technological piece so it could continue to produce electricity. So this thing was very important. That's the main reason why Moses was chased when he fled Egypt. He went and took the Ark of the Covenant out of the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. And the Pharaoh was like, damn, I let you go. And now you took our power source. We need that back. And so they chased him down. He didn't cross the Red Sea. That's another one of those remixes. Mm-hmm. He crossed the Sea of Reeds. When you go look at the Aramaic version, a much closer and smaller sea. And then if you look at the tectonic plates on USGS and all the other gov sites that show you all the tectonic plate movement, you can do a geological rewind in that region, and you discover around that same time period that the biblical text is talking about the story, there was a tectonic plate slippage which would have caused a tsunami. And when you have a tsunami, it sucks all the water out, and you can walk across dry land, and it brings it crashing back, just like it says in the biblical text. So it probably was a tsunami. Nobody's standing there with magic powers.
So the Ark of the Covenant was an electric source. The Red Sea was the Reed Sea, and a tsunami happened. It's crazy. Yo, shout out to Billy Carson.
And so how much success did you experience before you ended up signing with, what's his name, Fly?
Fly, TIG.
So how far did you get before you actually made that connection?
I had, before Fly signed me, I had already did one paid show because I was staying with my mama. You know what I mean? So my traction was already going. Like, this shit was microwave ready, bro, because I came home so ready and so hungry. And that hungry, like that hungriness, I be trying to, like, find it again. And I just told myself, like, you'll never find that hunger again. Only because, like, you're not in them type of situations anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like, now I'm like me creating a new hunger, but I came home so hungry, bro. Like, I wasn't taking no. I done just made 32 niggas tell me, like, everybody in here know, like, bro, you go home, rap. I go home, I come home, I'm rapping, and, like, man, my confidence just grew. Once I started knowing, like, I had to listen to the radio. I listened to the radio, like, I forgot what was the hottest thing on the radio. Rats on Rats on Rap. Rats on Rats on Rats on Rap.
Damn! What the fuck is going on? Like, every fucking week, Boosie says he was informed that rich homie Quan has passed away from an alleged overdose. I can't. I really, what the fuck? Is it just nothing else to do but that? But this is what it's coming to? Is this really what it's coming to? I am so sorry for his family. At this point, they having a fucking ball in heaven. This man is way too young. Way too fucking young. I am literally upset. I am sad. Rich homie Quan was only 34 years old. His birthday is in a month. A month. He's leaving behind 2 children. DeQuintes Devontae Lamar. Atlanta native, Atlanta rapper. Like, I'm so sorry to his family. I'm so sorry to his children. I'm just out of words at this point.
Damn, she ain't lying, bro. Rest in peace to rich homie Quan. Can't believe I'm even saying that. 34 years old. My condolences to his family. May they find peace in a time of grief. This one's a shocker, for real.
Okay, so we left off talking about the Anunnaki, the ancient story of gods coming from the sky, teaching the humans, and then mixing with them, creating a hybrid species. And we briefly see a similar story in the book of Genesis. In Genesis 6, we see that the sons of God married the daughters of humans, and this is where they talk about the Nephilim. A lot of versions of the Bible have translated this to mean giants, but also interpreted as hybrid sons of fallen angels. Now, also in the book of Genesis, we hear about Enoch, who was a descendant of Adam and a great-great-grandfather to Noah, as in Noah's Ark. We hear this juicy little detail about Enoch. He walked faithfully with God, then he was no more because God took him. You know what? Before Nostradamus, before the book of Revelation, we have our OG apocalyptic prophecy from our boy Enoch. Okay, now the book of Enoch is not included in the Bible. However, it is referenced in the Bible. So Jude in the New Testament, the book before Revelation where it all goes down, Jude's basically like, Enoch, the one that was related to Adam, he prophesied it. He said it all. He said the Lord was gonna cometh with tens of thousands of his saints. So now the book of Enoch was not exactly one book. So parts like this were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then it was translated and compiled all together. However, in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, they always kept the book of Enoch as a part of the Bible. And they believe to have the original translation, which is almost identical to some of the Hebrew translations. Now, the first part of the book of Enoch talks about the Watcher and expands on that part about the sons of God having children with the daughters of man. And here's the names of some of the angels / aliens / sons of God / Anunnaki, and according to Enoch, what each of them taught humans. What's interesting is a lot of them are doing astrology, astronomy, constellations, the clouds, the moon, the signs of the earth. Not only does this mimic what many ancient traditions were saying, the things they taught us and what they represent and their characteristics are very reminiscent of the Greek and Roman gods. Okay, so just for fun, here's some other alien sounding stuff. So a windstorm came out of the north, an immense cloud and flashing lightning surrounded by a brilliant light, and the center of the fire looked like glowing metal. But let's go back to the book of Genesis. God said, let's make them in our image, in our likeness, as if implying a group. And what exactly is the story of Adam and Eve telling us? What if the garden wasn't a garden at all? Why have cultures around the world intertwined the story of a serpent or a dragon into their creation? While we're on the topic of creation, DNA, and aliens, let's see what good old Dolores has to say in my favorite Dolores book, Keepers of the Garden. So here in chapter 13, Dolores is putting Phil under hypnosis in front of a group of people. You might remember Phil from the Apocalypse series. He was one of the people that she put under to contact Nostradamus. So here in this situation, Phil regresses to a past life where he comes to Earth on a ship, is collecting samples, and then is going to take them back. Dolores asks, where are you going to take the samples to? He says they're gathered and sent to the central and super universe, where they are considered and analyzed, and an adaptability study will be done. And then they would determine if Earth was ready to have life. So Dolores says, what is the central place? And now this is really interesting. Phil says it's Havana, the central or super universe. And this made me think of the Urantia book. Paper 14, the central and divine universe. This central planetary family is called Havana. It is far distant from the local universe of Nebadon. Oh, and if you don't know what the Urantia book is, there's a lot of mystery around who wrote it. But the story is that there was this businessman in Chicago who started having these episodes. He'd kind of like check out and this other being would talk through him. And this being started explaining exactly the entire beginning of creation to all the universes, to everything that has happened, a lot of stuff about Jesus, stuff about like Lucifer the fall, basically everything that's in the Bible. Back to Dolores. Phil's in a past life where he's taking samples from Earth, way before there was ever animal life here. So Dolores asks, like, do you recognize a God? He said all civilizations recognize a God. Those who are advanced recognize the same God. For he is one, he is all. So then she asks about the ships. He starts explaining that the motherships do not penetrate the atmosphere, that it's scout ships that are sent out into the atmosphere. So then Dolores is like, are these the ships that did the seeding? And he says, no, they were just collecting samples. The seeding was done by a separate and commissioned group of ships, whose sole purpose was to seed the planet. You may now be told that human life, and many other life forms on this planet, were seeded intentionally and was grown from a garden state. Where did the seeds come from originally? If we told you one place, you would think it's better than others. The seeds were brought from many places. He says he's from Andromeda, and he says they're still making visitations to Earth at this time. Dolores is like, this present time? The present time of this book was 1984. Dolores asked, are you the ones that seeded it, meaning the Andromedans? It said, no, they're just collecting samples. The seeding has been done by many different places, but that the seeding was intentional, and that Earth is basically a garden. And like we're talking about, what if the Garden of Eden isn't exactly a garden? And then they begin to say that this is kind of the process that happens. You on Earth are eventually going to seed other places too. And they said not as much physical, but spiritual. The things that you learn on Earth, you're going to take with you into different places around the universe. And they say the concept of seeding a planet is kind of like a sunflower. In its early stages, it is merely there. However, when it blossoms into a flower, it is open for all to see, and then it'll eventually give off parts of itself in order to spread more of its kind. Earth is on the verge of blossoming and opening up its flower for the universe to see. Would we be the seeds of the flower? Dolores asks. Some will be, yes. So then Dolores is like, well, what about creation in the Bible? And they basically say that evolution and creation are both true. That there was evolution of the body, but there was the divine gift of life, that is spirit, and that they are complementary to each other. Dolores says, can you tell me how that doesn't contradict the Bible? And they said, tell us how it does. Dolores wants to ask, what is the purpose of the ships coming to Earth? The UFOs all have their particular own missions. Some are seeding, some are exploration, some are charting, some are graphing. This is a large undertaking. It is not merely casting the seeds in the wind and come what may. This is a very well planned and orchestrated ordeal. We're talking of a physical seeding, such as planting cells in a hospitable environment, like the water of a lagoon or in a swamp, or on the forest floor, and allowing them to germinate. So Dolores is like, you must admit that's a radical idea. And I said, this is not an idea. We wish to stress this. This is not simply an idea. This is history. Let's see what the Pleiadians have to say about our creation story. Okay, so we're going to get this information from Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. According to the Pleiadians, humanity is an experiment. Humanity has been designed, as has everything else that exists within creation. They believe in a prime creator. They use the word prime creator to distinguish from all the other creator gods, meaning aliens, most likely. So they say that prime creator created extensions of himself and told them to go and create and bring everything back to him. Some of these creator gods were master geneticists. They had a vision to create this living library that would have all of the DNA from everywhere around the universe. So they helped develop Earth as a cosmic library of DNA. Now, after this living library of Earth was created, many millions of years after all these creator gods were creating stuff, this is how duality became. Because some of these creator gods were able to do whatever they want, and since this is a free will zone, they have the free will to come and take over Earth. And according to this book, that was the Anunnaki. They did not want the beings on Earth to know the truth about themselves or about their planet, keeping them uninformed and easier to control. They said that some of these creator gods manipulated our DNA again, after many times that we had already been manipulated. They want us to know that these creator gods that rule in other dimensions mostly create trauma, emotional trauma, to keep Earth at a certain frequency to nourish themselves. They say that these beings are part human and part reptilian, but because we don't want to instill any fear, so they call them the Lizzies. So coming up, we're going to finally talk about the reptilians. And they say that this control is not control by martial law. It's the psychological manipulation of consciousness through which reality is defined. That those within the reality aren't able to realize that anything outside of that reality exists. Okay, so more on fourth dimensional lizards controlling our reality coming up.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed tonight's rabbit hole. Before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to Tamisha for becoming the channel's newest member. Thank you, Tamisha. I appreciate your support. Peace and blessings. If you haven't already, please take a second
just to smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell.
Just to make sure the algorithm knows what's up. So what we gonna do, y'all? That's right. Run these numbers up. Thanks again. Until next time.